Matt Duchene, give me one word to describe your experience with the Dallas Stars so far.
Oh, one word. Um, Fun. I mean, it's been great. The guys are awesome. City's great. I think the fan base is something that has blown me away probably the most. I kind of had an idea of what I was walking into in terms of the organization and the guys and stuff like that, but in terms of the fans, I didn't realize how passionate they are about our team, and I mean it's Dallas, Texas. I mean, it's one of the best sports cities in the world. So I shouldn't have been surprised, I guess. But you think about Dallas, you think about the Cowboys, and then after that, it's kind of a toss up. But I think it was about a month into the season, my wife said to me that she couldn't believe how passionate the fans were and how many kind of super fans there are, like compared to other places we've played. And it's I've been lucky to play in front of some great fan bases, and this one is definitely right up there, if not right at the top.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about Dallas and why sometimes you guys might fly under the radar, specifically with a lot of the talk about Stanley Cup contenders. But I want to bring you back to sort of how you landed in Dallas to begin with. And you were bought out June 30th, the last possible day that you could. Just take me back to the moment. Like it caught me by surprise. I'm sure a lot of people, in the hockey world. What was your reaction? Did you know it was coming?
No, I found out 20 minutes before you did. Had no clue. Probably one of the hardest things I've ever been through. But it just felt like it was short lived, to be honest. The pain of it, and I think once I was able to kind of that first 24 hours is really hard because I had to go from you're grieving and you're upset, and Nashville is a place that our family considers home and will likely be home kind of for the rest of our life. That's the plan as of now, but that old adage, man plans, God laughs, kind of is true. And, being a guy who's a Christian and has a pretty deep faith, that was something that I really leaned on. And it just felt like, it was just, one of those things that was supposed to happen. And
what made it so painful?
I was committed. I wanted to be a Predator for the rest of my career. I was I was sticking that thing out. Obviously they're having a pretty good year right now, and they're kind of they're retooling a bit, going another direction. And hence why I ended up out of there, and so many of the other guys did. I was in it for the long haul, and it was like I say, I kind of had the rest of my career kind of planned out, I guess. I wanted to win a cup there. I think that city is so special, and the fan base is amazing. The organization, everything. I was tight with a lot of the guys there, still am. And, it was a place where I thought that would be the last stop along the way. But, this is a tough business. And, I definitely am grateful that I was able to kind of choose my next the kind of step and place to go. And, it's worked out as good as it possibly could have to this point.
So at the time you were 1 year away from a 43 goal, 86 point season. Like it was some of the best hockey you'd ever played. Did you ever get an explanation as to why?
Yeah, a little bit. I think they just, at the end of the day, it was just about changing direction, I think, of the franchise. And I think it was a lot of it was just pulling the roots out of what was there, I guess. And kind of, obviously, when a new guy comes in, they want to do their own thing and go their own way. And, you got to be a big boy about it, I guess. And for me, it was really tough, and it felt very, very personal. But at the end of the day, this is a tough business, and people are going to do what they think is best. And, I think over time, you kind of, you realize that a bit more once your heart, heals a little bit, and you get a little bit further away from it. I think you see it a little more clear. And for me, again, I continue to lean in my faith and just know that God has a great plan for me, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And yeah, I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing for me is that I never doubted my hockey ability or anything of where I am. I mean, yeah, that was the best year of my career 2 years ago. And last year at the deadline, when we kind of blew everything up, I was just under a point per game. I got hurt, I got the end of my finger blown off at the end of the year. So I wasn't able to continue to help the guys try and make that playoff push, which really sucked because I was, kind of, obviously we were really thin, Phil Forsberg was hurt. Roman Josi was hurt. I was kind of me and Colton Sissons were kind of the last men standing in there.
And you guys were still scrapping to make it.
We were, yeah. The young guys were playing great, and we were winning. We weren't scoring a lot, so your production goes down a bit. But I didn't really care. I was just all it was about making the playoffs, and it would have been such a great story, and we were damn close. So, kind of have it end the way it did sucked with that injury. Obviously, a pretty traumatic injury too for those. It took about 3 months to get kind of back to somewhat normal, and it still gives me problems here and there. But yeah, I mean, crazy whirlwind. And I think right now it's honestly, I think the older I've gotten, the more grateful I've become for adversity. I used to resent it, and now I think everything I've been through, that's been, I guess, quote unquote negative or testing in my career. I'm just really grateful for it because I've learned so many great lessons and just become stronger. And it feels like, God was putting me through those positions and in those situations to, improve something or get to a different place, and not a different place as a person. And yeah, I feel like, I learned a lot through everything I've gone through. And last year, or last summer when that all went down, I think the strength I felt through it from friends and family, and then obviously through my faith was it was the best point of my life to be able to deal with something like that. So like I said, there's not a day that goes by I don't wake up and I'm not grateful for some of that I went through. I'm grateful for it, and I'm really grateful to be a Dallas Star and be part of such an amazing team and organization.
So you mentioned whirlwind, and it was kind of quite literally that. Like, you were signed in Dallas one day later.
Yeah.
How did you know, that Dallas was the right place, aside from Jim Nill maybe being the nicest man on the planet?
Yeah.
What kind of swayed you to go there and pull the trigger so quickly? Like, you could have taken your time and said, hey, I want to really play this out and make sure it's the right fit.
Yeah. Well, fortunately enough, I didn't have to worry about, I've been blessed, financially in my career. And I was kind of at the point of my career where it was kind of the last thing that was on my mind. It was more about the fit for myself hockey wise, and then also for my family. Right. I mean, to be uprooted, from your home, and probably I've played a lot of really great places, but it's the only place we've played where we're like, damn, this is home, And when I signed in Nashville, I knew I was going to love it. I didn't know I'd love it as much as I did. And we just were ingrained. My wife's family moved from Colorado to just south of Nashville. It's been a great fit for them as well.
I feel like every time I turned around, you had a guitar in your hand. Like that was for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. The music was probably what drew me there at the very start. I mean, my third game of my career was in Nashville, and I was like, wow, this city is insane. And then we really fell in love with it during the All-Star game in 2016. And, it was kind of the place that I had my eyes on of wanting to go at some point.
And they had their eyes on you. Like David Poyle had mentioned that he had been after you for a long time.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that it's kind of funny when I got there, I could feel within probably 2 months of being there, I could feel that the organization was probably on its way to some sort of transition. And obviously we made a coaching change. And then it was kind of just some up and down years, and, we probably underachieved. If you look at the roster we had, we just couldn't quite find that cohesiveness, I guess. It was one of the best groups of guys, if not the best group of guys. I've been really lucky with that, especially the last few years. But the character and the culture and the guys we had in that room were unbelievable. So it wasn't for lack of trying. We all wanted to bring a cup to Nashville, and I mean, winning the cup's so hard. I mean, you see so many great teams that don't do it over the years. And we were maybe one of them that wasn't quite able to reach the level that we needed to. But yeah, I think get back to your original question. I think, I looked at that, when I had to make a decision, there was a couple teams that came to mind right off the bat. And I think Dallas called maybe a minute after. I remember Pete DeBoer called me that night, and he said, when I read the news, I called Jim Nill, and it was probably 5 minutes after it got released, and he had already called your agent. So they were number one team in my head when it all went down. And I would have really explored them actually at free agency back in 2019, but they just didn't have the cap room at the time. So we had a conversation. My agent called and they just said, yeah, we can't do it numbers wise. And there's obviously lots of teams like that, right? When you're trying to go to a top team, you got to either take less or there's no room for you, one or the other. So that was kind of the case then back in 2019. So they knew I had interest in playing for the Stars then. And then when we when this all went down, they were right in the mix right away. I had it narrowed down pretty quick. I was really lucky to have some great options. Dallas ended up being the top. It was funny at one point, I think it was, so I find out at 11:30 on the Friday. I think, yeah, it was Friday. I just finished like workout and found out. And, by I think 1:00 the next day, I kind of had it narrowed down to a couple teams. And I was like, how am I going to make this decision? I had a piece of paper. I had pros and cons. I had my family with me all day. I didn't eat for like almost 2 days. I lost like 6 or 7 pounds in that time, just so stressed out.
I need that diet.
Yeah. Yeah, we all do. But I went from, at 1:00, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I might need, at one point I kind of called the two teams I was kind of in between. I just said, hey, how much time do I have here? I might need a little bit of time here. I'm reeling emotionally. I've never cried so much in my life. I'm not a crier either. I was just going through so much, and I was like, how the hell am I ever going to pick? And then all of a sudden it was just like, at 1:00, I was like, I'm going to need 2 or 3 days. And at 3:00, I decided. It was wild. It just hit me. I talked to a couple people I trust and outside of my family, and everybody was telling me Dallas. And for so many reasons. I mean, Jim Nill, like you said, I had probably 10 people tell me he might be the best human being in hockey. And he's lived up to that all around. And then I knew Pete DeBoer from Team Canada stuff. I knew Steve Spott from Team Canada stuff. Misha Donskov, who we hired from Vegas, I knew from Team Canada stuff. So there was that kind of Ontario, Canada connection that was, I just felt right and comfortable, and it's felt that way from day one. It's been really fun.
So put me in your shoes in August, okay? You sign July 1, you get settled, you go through the kind of grieving process of being like, hey, this team didn't want me anymore.
Yeah.
But then are you angry, motivated? Like, what drove you through the rest of the summer to be ready to play?
I'll be honest. Was I angry? Yeah, of course I was angry. I was hurt. I was all those things. Like anybody would be. If I wasn't, I don't care enough, but man, it was, and I know I've talked about God a lot in this interview, but I can't not talk about it because it's so much of my life. And especially, last few years, I really dove deep into my faith that even more. I've been a Christian my whole life, but it was like God was saying to me the whole time, this is going to hurt like hell, but I promise it'll be quick. I just kept hearing that in my head. It sounds, for people that aren't believers, it's going to sound like, bunch of crap. But honestly, I kept that, I got around it quick. My wife looked at me at the end of the summer and said, I don't know how you got through that. I don't know how you did it like you did. I thought you were going to be a mess all summer. And I said I did too. And once I got to Dallas, we were so excited to get down there. What made it easy too is my kids are at the age where they're young enough that they can adjust and make jumps. And so that took some of the pressure off because I was really worried about them. My son started going to school. The school's unbelievable. He made friends quick. He was loving it. He fell in love with hockey. He always loved my games, but he fell in love with playing himself, which made it easy. Obviously, with it being my passion, it was really fun to see that happen. And then my wife, who I was really worried about being away from her family again, because obviously when we left Colorado, she's from there. We left her family then. That was hard on her then. At that point, moved to Ottawa, different country, first time she'd ever moved away. So that was really hard. And I was wondering how I was going to go this time. And within like a month, she's like, I'm so comfortable here and this is great. So it was honestly way easier than we ever expected. And I just feel blessed for that. And the guys were great off the bat. The coaches were great. I mean, in the summer, right after everything happened, Pete DeBoer took like a little plane from like Grand Bend or wherever he's from down in Southern Ontario up to Aurelia, grabbed Steve's spot because he's on Simcoe, Lake Simcoe there, and they drove up to my place and they just sat down out back with me and we, I walked them around the property, showed them kind of everything. They know my parents a little bit, so walked them next door. My parents live next door to us in the summer. We have a big point on the lake. It's awesome.
So that's the big perk of being in cottage country, right? As your sort of home base, is that it's an attractive place for people to come visit you.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, I mean, they came up and right away, they just made me feel so comfortable, and I kind of knew what I was walking into, and I was, my back was up. I mean, you feel like you can trust the situation, and all of a sudden, I thought I was part of the plan going forward in Nashville. That was what was, that's what I thought right up until that all happened. It was when Johansson got traded, because he was probably in the same boat. When he got traded, I kind of got my your
spidey senses were tingling.
Yeah, a little bit. I was just like, hey, maybe this is going further than we thought. Yeah, right. So right away, I went into, when they came, I was very uptight. I as much as I knew them, I just was like, I didn't, when something like that happens to you, you're you kind of have that, protection, kind of reaction. Right. And that went down pretty quick. We had a really candid, open, awesome conversation, and they just made me feel so comfortable and felt very, you go from feeling very unwanted to extremely wanted by a really good hockey team with really good people involved. And that's what's so funny about this business, right? Is it's puzzle pieces, right?
One day you're down, the next day you're up.
Yeah, it's like every team needs different pieces, and what works for one team might not work for another. And this was the first time I really went through that in this league, because obviously I've been traded and been with different teams, but every time it was my choice kind of to move on from that team, and just because it wasn't the right fit for me and at that time. And like I said, I'm grateful for everywhere I've been, and I've enjoyed everywhere, and everywhere was a great place for me at one time or another. But I mean, sometimes you have to move on to different things, and you're chasing different things, and you're learning, you're going through all that. But this was the first time it was not by choice. So it was a different experience for sure.
You mentioned how all those stops kind of prepared you to be able to handle this. It's one thing to kind of question, hey, this team might not want me, but then the next sort of link to that is, can I still play at this level? Can I get to the, the pinnacle that I was at previously? So you've had an exceptional career, number 3 pick. You've been traded for multiple first round picks. You've made $75 million, but is the transition that you've made from where you were in the summer to the hockey that you've played this year, is that one of the bigger accomplishments of your career?
Good question. Yes and no. I think, like I said, I never doubted where I was at as a hockey player. My first 2 years in Nashville were everything was out of whack for pretty much everybody. I had a really hot start there. Then kind of the team went through some slump. I went through slumps. We were trying to find our way. We weren't scoring. It was then the next year, COVID year, all the COVID stuff, right? And then the last 2 years, I was pretty happy with where I was at. And so I didn't really think I had to reinvent anything. I think moving back to center really helped me because I felt playing wing, it takes a little bit of your skating out of the equation, right? And that's one of the things that makes me, I guess, and is a strength of mine. And I felt coming in to Dallas, being right back at center.
Did they tell you would be when you?
They did, yes.
When they visited you.
Yeah, when Pete and Spotter came up, they told me they saw me as a centerman and that I'd be playing with Sagan and Marchment. I was just really excited to play with those two guys. I knew I was, big fans of their games, and I knew like their production was down from the year before, but year to year, it's. I always joke that the NHL should be called the SHL, the Situational Hockey League, instead of the National Hockey League, because one guy plays one place and lights it up, and then he goes and plays somewhere else, and he's the exact same player, but it just doesn't fit. Mm-hmm. And not saying those two didn't, but year to year that can happen in your own environment, right? And but the big thing I knew about those two guys, and then skating with them in Dallas right away, I'm like, geez, both these guys look unbelievable. And I remember talking to them on the ice and just saying, like, early on, just being like, guys, we have the potential to be with our skill sets, if we believe that we can be one of the best lines in this league. Not just, and we can push obviously the top line here last year, which, it's been jumbled a little bit now, again, year to year, right? Was a top 3, if not best line in the NHL. Mm-hmm. And I mean, when that line's together, they're still unbelievable. But I said to those guys, I said, we can either match them or we can push them at least, let's do that. And that internal competition and that internal, you're always rooting for your guys. Like, doesn't matter. Like when they score, you're pumped. And then you're also like, okay, now we got to keep up, and I know those guys feel the same way. And I think that's a really good dynamic to have. And that was something I talked about with those guys right off the bat, was like, hey, let's push ourselves and believe here that we can be this. And I think within, 15, 20 games, we were kind of like, I know those two were like, wow, this is actually happening now. And, we still got another level. And, obviously you're going to have your nights where you're great, and you're going to have your nights where you're just okay, and nights where you're bad. But we've been able, when we've had a bad game, we've been able to respond really quickly. So, yeah. And again, your original question, I would say, I believe that this could happen. I could be in this position. I've always been the one, I believe in myself, and I'm always going to bet on myself, but you never know. Like I said, it's a situation and you never know how it's going to play out. So my mentality coming in was just, hey, come in, play your game, fit in to the system, everything like that, and you'll find your niche within that. That was kind of that. And that was just experience, right? Of going through this, situation a few other times. So again, like I said, like I was at this point in my life, I was the most prepared for this kind of change.
You called it the Situational Hockey League. I prefer to think of it as the Never Hungry League, but maybe that's
it's
just
that
me.
Too. It's definitely the Never Hungry League too.
So it's interesting though, like you mentioned Marchment and Sagan and how they told you that would be your line in the summer. For a million reasons, that almost never stays true. You guys have played almost the entire season together, 490 minutes already at even strength. You mentioned also kind of how the lines feed off of each other. And I look at this Stars team and I say, tell me where the hole is. And this is not me pandering to talking to you. I picked you guys to win the Stanley Cup before the season started. Like, what is, the expectation for this team? And you guys sort of just quietly go about it. I mentioned if you talk to people around the league, fanfare-wise, it's Edmonton right now with the heater that they've been on, or Colorado in the season that they've had, or people talk about the defending champs in Vegas. Are you guys okay not getting the same sort of love and attention and flying under the radar?
Yeah, I think we are. And I think it both maybe insulates you a bit, or it shields you a little bit from too much outside expectation. Although I do think this team could handle it. It's probably the most mature veteran group I've been around, not just from the veterans, but from the young guys too. The young guys are mature beyond their years. It's a really amazing vibe. And I think it starts with Jim Nill. Training camp this year, a lot of teams, when they get in this position where they're looked at to be a contender, you always have those speeches at the start of the year and from the GM and the coach, and you don't remember the words necessarily come February, but you remember the message and the vibe, if that makes sense. The kind of...
And what was it?
Jim said, I think he said something to the effect of, I'm not going to say it's Stanley Cup or bust. Like that's such a ignorant statement to make, because the league's too good. Injuries happen. Hot goalies can steal series. Look at Boston last year, right? And then Florida. Like Florida was barely making the playoffs, and there was like a crazy upset near the end of the year. They barely got in, and then they upset the Bruins and they go to the finals and almost win the cup, right? Like it's too like him. So he kind of said like, that was his sentiment, was like, you can't say it's Stanley Cup or bust, but like, how can we put ourselves in the best position to win the Stanley Cup? And I just felt that was so wise and just very even keel, very confident, but also humble, and just sets a tone. And it keeps, and I think that tone, and then Pete had a great speech, very similar. And the other thing we talk about too is, and that everyone's bought into, is, it's a little less for a lot more. It's kind of our team slogan, where if you look at guys' ice time, especially up front, we're so deep. Guys can't play 21, 22 minutes. I mean, you look at some of the other teams, so the top guys in the league right now that, numbers wise, they're playing 23, 24 minutes a night on forward, which is extremely hard to do over 82 games. And if you do that with our team, you're going to have guys that are just not going to be able to bring what they can bring, because we are so deep. So that was another sentiment right from the beginning, and every guy's bought into that, and that is such a key to our success. And it's funny, you have games where maybe you're not out there as much as you want, but you're sitting there and you're watching these unbelievable players do their thing, and you're not even like, you just enjoy watching when you're not out there. So I think that that's a long answer, but that's been that vibe has kind of been what we've built this on, and kind of our day to day. And it's doesn't matter if we're down 3 goals or we're up 3 goals. We're just like this all the time, for better and for worse at times, and I think 95% of the time it's a good thing. And it keeps us, we've had a lot of comeback wins. We've had a lot of overtime wins. We've given up a first goal a lot this year, and it hasn't bothered us one bit. So I think that's like a playoff mentality, and you can't ride that roller coaster. And this team does a really good job at staying even keel.
All right. So the last year has been a roller coaster. You mentioned comeback. I'll leave you with this. This has been the Matt Duchene comeback tour. But I think I'm curious, what's next? What does this look like for you? Are you going to is Dallas a place that you'd like to stay, or is this here for a good time, not a long time?
I mean, I'd love to, honestly, it's hard to answer that question publicly, because I know everyone's going to read into my answer, but I mean, this is a place I definitely want to explore staying. And I'm trying to not think about that too much. Yeah, is a little bit of a carrot in front of me? Absolutely. I mean, it definitely, when you're on a 1-year deal, that you're kind of dancing for your supper every night that way. I've never been one to be driven by the money side of things. I think you always want to get your worth and earn and get what you've earned. But at the same time, I play for the love of the game. I play to win a Stanley Cup, and I play to be the best player that I can be. And I take my kind of my legacy or my career, where, what I'm going to look back on when I'm retired very, very seriously. And this feels like a really good fit for me. Both my family, hockey wise, there's just an incredible organization, incredible group of guys, and we're extremely happy in Dallas for sure. So we'll see what the future holds, and hopefully we can make something work.
Matt Duchene, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your time, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.